Yeah.
Did you happen to see if either Tom or Judy were in there?
I don't think they are yet,
Okay.
but we still got a couple minutes, so.
Thanks, Judy.
There's Tom. That was crazy.
No.
You're not related.
It's not a bad day to work.
Yeah.
So,
You guys ready?
Yeah.
Yep. Are you guys ready over there?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a bunch of stuff prepared for you guys today. We kind of expect it to go, as long as possible here to try to get as much done as possible.
Okay.
But I'm gonna start with, kind of what we ended on last time, which, at the end of the last session, I made a note, about the usage of the last best final language.
Mhm.
And I think I said that, that I didn't respect, the language, or we didn't respect the language that's been used. And I think I want to just make it very clear for that purpose that, the GAU here, respects the, both sides, have the ability to say when they are done bargaining a certain article, they can say this is, as far as we're willing to go, and we both have that, ability to do that. What we didn't, like is the way Europe has been using that before, which has been to kind of blanket it across several proposals that we think are very far apart, where we think there's still wiggle room. And especially in Article 8's case, using that language and then still coming back with the final proposal. So we just want to make it very clear that when we use the terms last best final and we hear it from you, we would just want clarity on if it is actually a final proposal, or if we are still negotiating at that point. Because we are not going to waste our time giving proposals if, you guys are done bargaining over that article. We're happy to take those articles, set them to the side, TA as much as we can. If we need to, consider them for impasse at the end of the day, but, not waste our time on them and focusing on the ones that we still have, mutual agreement that we can make movement on. So just to kind of go back on this, so you've used the term last best final language, from my understanding, for articles at least, 3, 8, 10, 16, and 28.
Let me pull my chart up.
Yeah, of course.
Would you mind saying that again for me?
3, 8, 10, 16, and 28.
Thank you.
And those aren't the ones that I've got.
So which ones do you have listed
Yeah,
for?
I've got last best final marked on 3. Yeah, 3, yes.
Yep.
16,
Mhm.
28.
And 28.
Yeah.
Okay, I believe I had marked Article 10 because you had indicated you were close, if not to, at your final point, so maybe it was
Yeah,
just
no,
different
yeah,
language.
10, yes. 10
And
as
then
well.
8, I believe you had indicated was last best final before, but then you still gave us another proposal, so maybe we stopped indicating it as that,
So
but.
let me, can I say something, or do you want
Of
to?
course, no, you
So I guess here's what I'm thinking. When we're saying last best final on certain articles, it's when our team has believed that if we are just exchanging the same thing back and forth,
Mhm.
that is an indication to us that, look, we're clearly at loggerheads. If there's still movement being made on both sides, then I think that we would refrain from saying that. But when we reach a place that it seems to us, it appears to us, that if we hand the same articles back and forth a couple times where we're rechanging the same thing and then you all are effectively changing the same thing and there's not any real progress being made,
Mhm.
that is when we're that is when we're using it.
That's when you're using that? Okay, well,
yeah.
we appreciate that
Yeah.
clarity.
I mean,
And-
10 stands on its own because 10 has to do with financial authority, but. You know, the other ones are when we feel like we're just playing ping pong. And we're asserting a provision and you're reasserting a provision and we're reasserting the same provision and you're reasserting the same provision. That's when we're like, okay, look, clearly. This is as good as we feel we're gonna be able to do. So that is what it is intended to indicate. If there's some sort of major concession. That fundamentally changes the dynamic in some way, shape or form.
Right,
But keep in mind, I mean, this is what I would say. We have been bargaining, albeit with a hiatus over the summer. We have been bargaining for, I think at this point, 16 or 17 months. It's not as if we have not been meeting and exchanging proposals for an extremely long time.
yeah, that is true,
So-
yeah. I mean, I don't disagree that we have been giving great proposals. I mean, we're just not interested in, bargaining with ourselves over some of these things. I think we've given several offers, for example, for Article 16, and just have been met back with that sort of brick wall of, there's no movement from
Mhm.
UF side. And so we're not gonna continue that sort of performance. Article 16, I mean, that's one of the proposals we're gonna say we're handing back to you today, but that's just a return to the proposal we gave on October 7th. We're not gonna be bargaining with ourselves over that. Obviously, if there's no movement from you guys, you indicated your last best final. We're not gonna waste our time on that, for now. You know, once we get to the end and once we TA some of these other things, maybe we can both revisit that and take a look, but it's not worth, I think, either of our times to continue to waste time bargaining over that right now. Article 3 and Article 28, we don't have with us today. These are just things that were not in the top priority, but we are going to start with Article 10. We think it's a top priority to make sure that we continue to reiterate that that is our top priority. Article 10 will become before, all of these other articles again and again. So let me pull that up for you real quick. And I sent you an email a couple of minutes ago with all of the proposals for today.
Okay, thanks.
So let me know if you received that properly.
Yep, I got it. Looks like I've got 27, 16, 13, 8, 7, and 10.
Yeah. So actually, can you,
Sure.
yeah, you can share, sorry. Okay, let me pull it up on my computer here as well. Okay, so Article 10, I think we've had a discussion before and we're kind of, at that point where it's just, changing of some minor languages. And so what we've done here is, our movement has been very little. We did not see anything from the last proposal from UF that, was, positive. And there's a reason we didn't, give you guys any counter proposals last time when we were meeting. It's because, the amount of movement we were seeing was not great, and we're not going to bargain with ourselves and make large steps if that's not being reciprocated. So what you're seeing here at the 9 and 12 months is, I believe, no movement whatsoever. And we think that's fair. What we have here for the raises is we have made some movement. We lowered down from I believe 2,000 and 1725 to 1750 and 1350 respectively for these merit raises. Obviously, the merit raises are not our top priority. There's movement there. We've moved down. We've met you guys a little bit closer to the middle. But our priority first and foremost will always be that minimum stipend. Minimum stipend is what we revolve around. So we'd love to see some movement there. We'd love to have a conversation about how we get closer to that number. But until we see some movement from UF moving up, we're not really interested in moving much further down at this point. Do you guys have anything to add for that? Okay, do you guys have any questions on Article 10?
I think so.
Okay, we do have some extra people in the room and in the Zoom call today, and so if you guys are agreeable, we were gonna have 1 or 2 people talk about their personal experiences as it relates to Article 10.
That's fine.
Um,
You know who they are, though. They're not just.
We have people who have signed up ahead of time.
Okay.
If there are people here who haven't signed up, there might be a surprise, but any of the opinions they express, we're gonna correct if they go against
Okay.
the opinions of
We've had kind of
GAU
an
here.
unpleasant experience last time we met.
If we go into anything that is a personal attack or anything like that, we'll cut it off there.
Alright,
They
fair
should just be, and especially for people on the Zoom, these should be statements about your experiences as they relate to Article 10. We're just gonna do 1 or 2 people right now. We're gonna keep these articles moving. And then if we have time at the end of our articles, then we can fit anyone we couldn't fit before. But we wanna make sure we get through all of these articles at the end of the day as well.
Jonathan, you wanna-
It's not a personal experience. I don't remember it. Like numbers.
Yeah, well, personal experience numbers, as long as it's not like a personal attack against anyone, that's what we're trying to avoid here. But yeah, anything else is perfectly acceptable.
So, the, living wage calculator for Alachua County states, for, 1 adult with no dependent would be making, $20.04 an hour. And most GAs at UF make under 17 an hour. The 2004 amounts to an annual income of $42,577 before taxes. And, with most people having monthly expenses of at least $2,000, I do believe it would be reasonable to have a minimum, stipend of on the order of 32,000. But that, I can't really, I don't have personal experience to share.
Thank you for that, of course.
Anisha is also in Zoom.
Yeah, Anusha, you had signed up on the Google form. Did you want to speak to that for a minute?
Hi, thanks for adding me in. Am I audible to everybody?
Yes.
Yes. So talking a little more about the salary disparities that exist, because when I'm talking about salary differences and work expectations and workload on GAs amongst different colleges, it varies a lot. And I can say that because I know there are people who are RAs in different colleges and they've not done any TA. And as per the laws, they're expected to do TA for 2 credits. But because their professor is a big shot, they got that done for free. It was like a free pass for them, whereas there are students all across the university who was working very hard for their work, and they are working towards their teaching assignments, be it their RAs or just regular TAs as well. And at the same time, there is a significant salary difference. If we take College of Engineering and other colleges across UF, there's a big salary difference in RA as well as TAs, which is not good. And it just, the whole experience makes it sound like our jobs are not good enough. We are not doing good enough work to deserve that salary or a higher pay. Versus there are students sitting in engineering college, not doing any TA, even if to do so, and just getting away with a lot of, low, easy work, and they are just contributing only to their research with very set specific questions that were set up already by their PIs versus TAs who are just on TA appointmentship. They have to do everything on their own. Research, their TA appointment, the workload, and many of the TAs, they have more workload, and some of them have taught with students that probably like around 170 students on online courses with just 1 TA. That
Thank you.
no way covers 0.5 FTE appointment. It is definitely more than that, and they deserve to be paid a lot more.
Thank you, Anusha. We're gonna have to keep going on there, but I do appreciate your time and opinions on that. Obviously that touched on stipends, but it also touched on a little bit of workload as we're gonna get into later. And obviously this is a complex thing that goes beyond just a number that is the minimum stipend. There are differences between RA and TA. There are differences between the different colleges and the work assigned, and those are things that we're trying to establish and address through some of these other articles as well.
Yeah, we also have Martina in
Martina,
the chat. Martina, if you want to talk.
Hello, hi. I'm sorry for joining this late. I was in another meeting. So my name is Martina Monaco, and I'm about to wrap up my doctoral degree in the geology department. So I am here. As GAU has helped me greatly in settling the matter with my former advisor, who has now left UM. I would like to speak about the inadequacy of our salaries, especially compared to our workload. So I will take my own personal experience in this meeting. So right now in this semester, I have been assigned to a general education class, which had over 100 students. In addition to that, I am preparing my dissertation because I am planning in spring. And the workload has been absolutely absurd for me. Too much TAing plus a heavy workload of research has turned me into working overnight, over the weekends, over federal holidays, and all of this for petty cash. So what I would like UF to implement is a living wage. I am literally stressed out about rent. I am stressed out about foods. I am delaying some dental work and new pair of glasses that I need just because these things are not even covered in our insurance, and my take-home pay is literally too low. I live paycheck by paycheck, and I am very stressed out. I am at the ripe age of 29, still depending on my family in my home country of Italy to give me some money month to month to just get by. And I rely on them some months, especially when the fees are due, to purchase some food. So we as graduate students are the backbone of research. Research depends on us, teaching depends on us. Many courses wouldn't even be developed if it wasn't for graduate assistants. And yet we are not paid a livable wage. The cost of living has skyrocketed ever since I came here, which was in 2021. And the stipends have simply not matched the pace of rising groceries, rising rent, and rising medicines that we need to get by. I would kindly ask you to take into account our requests and take into account the immense work that we do to keep university as high as it is in the top 1% of the universities in the world. And with this, I will wrap up my, my talk. And thank you so much for your listening and for your time.
thank you so much. Thank you so much for that.
You also wanted to talk on stipends? Yeah. Whatever you feel comfortable with.
Hi, so, I'm a PhD student in biology, and basically since I've gotten here, I have had just like a constant like existential like depression and sadness over the fact that like, with a life, or you spend 4 years in undergrad and you spend a lot of time doing research before you get here. You have this, you're told that you're doing kind of, I don't want to use the word elite, but like really important work, work that takes a lot of skill, work that takes a lot of time and training. And then I get here and I'm doing actual scientific research, things that when I tell people what I'm doing, they refer to me as a scientist. And yet I can't feel that way because I'm paid scraps. I can't, I work a second job to be able to afford to live in a place that is really not nice, has been treating me like very poorly. I even just like looking around for like housing for next year, like rents are just constantly increasing, and the like base stipend rate definitely is not enough to keep up with it. When I first came here, I was doing DoorDash on a bike so that I could make rent payments. So there seems to be like a really deep misalignment between the like perceived like status of being doing like scientific research or like doing the kinds of work that takes so much time and effort and training to get to this point, and being paid like I'm doing something that doesn't matter. And it's really, really demoralizing to just constantly like have to worry about like whether or not you can afford to like make all of your bills that month. And I especially feel this over the summer because, like most biology students, I'm on a 9-month contract. And I really don't understand what the reasoning for this was. We're not, undergraduates. It's not like a lot of us can just like go live with our parents for a few months in the summer. Like, we're grown adults who again are doing a job. Like, suddenly I have to figure out how I'm going to fill like a $2,000 income gap for 3 months. Because it's not like I can like suddenly like get rid of my lease, get rid of all of my bills and like go disappear for 3 months and then come back. So yeah, it's just been like a really, really deep struggle. And I really wish that, the university like valued the work I did as much as I thought that they would when I first came here.
Thank you. Okay, I think we'll move on to our next article now. If there's anyone else who we didn't get to right then, we'll, if we have time at the end, we're happy to hear from you, either with UF team or we'll do it during debrief. Thank you guys as well for listening to these things. I know we come every time with Article 10 and we talk about a living wage, and we talk about, you know, the numbers on the piece of paper, but it's very different to look at the numbers and look at how it's actually affecting GAs, how it's actually affecting how we pay for rent. And, you know, we talk about living wage all the time, but living wage isn't just a number, it's, you know, how we pay for food and things like that. And those are the tough decisions that GAs have to make every day. And so, you know, obviously we have to go through this. We have to go up and down on our numbers. We have to discuss what works best. But at the end of the day, GAs want respect, and they want to feel like they're getting respected, and they want to be able to do a job for UF, help UF succeed, while they can also succeed for themselves. And that comes with getting paid a substantial wage. So we're going to move on to our second article here. And that's going to be Article 20. What we've numbered is 27, but obviously it is not something that's in the contract right now. It's going to be on graduate housing. And give me just a second to pull it up here on Zoom as well. So obviously we've talked about graduate housing before, and it was not something that the University of Florida was interested in discussing with us. It was something that we never got a counter proposal for, and you made it clear that your reasons why. And so what we've gone back is we've tried to go back and figure out what is the most vital for graduate assistants when it comes to graduate housing. Obviously, our first proposal we are very proud of. We think that there are issues not only with how GAs are treated within graduate housing, but how much money they're spending on these things, and it comes back to wages and things like that. And we do appreciate graduate housing for as it stands. We appreciate that it is, you know, a lower rent burden than other places within the county. And we appreciate that it gives grads a place to be around other graduates, have places for their family. But there's a lot that could be improved about it, and that's what we're trying to get to this here. So what we've done is we've gone back and we've tried to eliminate maybe some of the financial concerns that we had here. We really tied it back to how GAs are treated in these areas and how we can improve the status of GAs within these areas. So we removed the things as they relate to finances. We removed the idea of rent burden, utility subsidy, and the waiver of the application fees. We think these are great things. We think these are ideas that should be implemented. But we understand that when it comes to that brings a whole other constraint into this conversation, that brings the finances of the University of Florida. And while we think that, you know, GAs deserve all of these things that we've crossed out, we are willing to have a discussion and make movement and say, let's have a discussion. Let's see what we can do. And so we've really focused on these renters' rights. We focused on, you know, there are GAs living within these areas right now that do not have rights that we think they should have. They should have the right to have, you know, a roommate that isn't directly related to them, the right to remain in the lease until the lease is up, the right to have a pet, the right to have a representative that helps decide their community. And these are things they don't have, and these are things that feel very basic. They're not very hard things. They're not very complex, but they show the GAs living in these areas and these grads that they are respected, and that they can be, they are important to the University of Florida, beyond just, a source of extra income via rent each month. And so that's what we really try to focus on. We try to hopefully alleviate some of the concerns when it comes to finances, but just really focus on, how can we treat GAs better? And make sure that GAs are involved and having these conversations, and can be respected on campus. So, do you guys have anything to add to this article here?
No, but do we have a printout for them?
Oh, I do have a printout for you. I forgot to hand it out. My apologies.
It's okay.
It's not a very long article.
You already, I mean, you sent it to me electronically, so.
Yeah.
Sorry not to cut you off.
No, you're fine. If you guys have anything to add, I mean,
No, I think that covered it.
We
Yep.
do have, two people that want to speak on graduate housing.
okay. Just before we do
Oh.
that, let me, do you guys have any questions or comments on that before we allow a couple people to speak?
I mean, I think the only comment I would have is not much different than what we said last time, which is, look, you're welcome to bring whatever proposals you want.
Mm.
But the official university position is that housing is not a mandatory subject to bargaining, and we are not interested in putting it in our employment contract. So, like I said, you're welcome to bring proposals on it. We're not saying it's an illegal subject of bargaining. It would probably fall under permissible, but we're not obligated to bargain housing, and we're not in a position to start. So that's fine, and we're welcome to listen to, to whomever would like to speak on it. But as I said last time, I do not see a housing article making it into the contract this session, period. It's not a mandatory subject of bargaining.
Yeah, it's not a mandatory subject of bargaining, and I think we understand that, and we understand that the University of Florida has the, their ability to say yes or no to anything when we do this. That doesn't eliminate, what we're talking about. It doesn't eliminate that, these issues exist, that graduate housing has serious problems that need to be addressed by the University of Florida. And whether or not that, this article is the way that these issues are addressed, these issues aren't gonna go away. They're gonna get worse year over year. And grads are the ones that are going to be negatively affected by these. They are negatively affected by these. And so saying you're not interested, sure, you have the ability to do that. But that doesn't solve these issues. That doesn't do anything for these grads living in these conditions. That shows these grads that, to be quite frank, that the University of Florida, does not think they deserve the respect of having these rights. And I'm really disappointed to hear that you won't even entertain having that conversation, but, we're gonna let a couple people talk, about those experiences with grad housing and maybe make it more of a reality.
Can I first, so there's a lot of people in the audience that I think it would be their first time hearing you guys' position on this article. Do you mind elaborating a little bit more on why the university is not interested in putting in the contract in writing that graduate assistants have the right to access graduate housing and have these renter rights?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very simple and straightforward. I mean, it's not much more complicated than what I already said. I mean, it's not a mandatory subject of bargaining. And we're not interested in putting it in the contract. I mean, you're welcome to ask for whatever you'd like. We're only obligated to bargain over certain topics. This is not one of them.
Yeah, but
So-
I'm just asking for like depth in that argument that you're.
Sure,
giving
there's,
us
I mean,
interest-
there's entire infrastructure that deals with the housing on campus. At this point, the university is not interested in forcing that infrastructure and all of the supports that go along with the entire housing program to be subject to bargaining and complaints from the graduate assistant union. We're just not interested in that. There's already enough complication in housing to have to also then make sure that we're bargaining our housing with you all. I mean, that's that, I don't know, it's not about any one specific topic. I mean, we could get into the specifics of whether or not the right to have a dog is a compelling issue. I mean, to your point, Austin, but I don't think we need to go that far because it almost doesn't matter what you have listed. Fundamentally, comprehensively, we're not interested in putting our housing agreement underneath the collective bargaining agreement.
Because you don't want GAU to have the right to bargaining.
No, you have the right to bargain over certain topics, but this is not one of them. Oh, I thought you were talking in a more general sense. No.
You're not interested to put it in the contract because that would give GAU the right to bargain for it.
Yes.
Okay, so we have two people willing to talk on graduate housing,
Mhm.
unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, sure. And, this is Hanjing. So right now I live in the graduate house that I'm in the village. I moved into the diamond since like 2020. And I think there is a large amount of the GA, living in the graduate house. And unfortunately, so the housing rate has been increased several times since last, several years. And initially it increased from the 680 and then to the 70, to the 717. And then this summer, it continued increase to 764. And the purpose of the UF housing is, give students affordable living cost, and then let students focus more on the research, on the study, do not let them to do some part-time job to for extra money. So I think we should put on the graduate house in the contract. Yeah, so, and another thing is, I would like to talk about the housing, security. So I have a scooter and it got lost last week. And the UFPD is helping me to, found it. So I think, there is something issues here. So I think we would like to put that in our contract to discuss with UF. So, and, in the past several years, the housing rate has been increasing several times. And we are not informed at all before the housing rate is increasing. So can we, discuss the housing rate, and have some bargaining for the housing rate increasing? So we need to have, we need to have discussion procedure about this issue.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I've never even had the opportunity to get into graduate housing because there's something like a year-long waiting list. There just like isn't enough supply for like the really high demand there is for it. And, if you look at like private housing, which seems to be like where the majority of GAs are like forced to go because again, there's just not enough supply in the graduate student housing to meet the demand for it. Those, the rents are just not affordable on the wages that we're on, and they're incredibly restrictive with regards to like these myriad of other things. With like, are there GAs who maybe like can't afford to have a car, and yet the only places within their like their income level are they require a car to traverse this massive distance to get to campus. Like there are so many logistical things that would just like be fundamentally easier if there was an increased housing supply for graduate students through the university, and this is something that like the GAs could actually communicate with the university with through our contract.
Thank you. This is a complex issue, and I'm not gonna say it isn't. I'm not gonna say that anything we would present here would solve that issue or make it easy. You can't just put on tech to solve the kind of issues that grad housing has. And you know, any of those stuff, a lot of it comes back to wage, it comes back to getting paid, and a lot of it comes back to respect. Obviously, we are graduate assistants, and that comes that we are employees. As part of that, we have to be full-time students per the contract. And, you know, by adding graduate housing, you know, UF also becomes, the landlord of these grads. And if UF is setting the terms of how much you're paid and how much you have to pay them, and that is not a sustainable, you know, metric, that's not a sustainable balance, then that is on UF to address and solve. And if UF's not interested in solving it, by having an honest discussion, having these bargainings, then, I mean, I hope that UF is addressing it in other manners. But based off the last several years of how they've treated grads and grad housing, I don't have high hopes for that. And that's why we made these proposals today, is to say UF is not doing enough to address these, and progress needs to be made. So we will move on. We won't harp on this too much more, but you know, not being interested doesn't solve the issue. It just it ignores it. So So next up, I think we'll do Article 7. Let me pull that up real quick. And, this one is 2 pages, but I didn't have a stapler handy.
Hand it all the way down.
Yeah. So what you're gonna see here is, and again, an attempt to address the other half of not being paid enough, and that's that GAs work too much and are not paid for the hours they're worked, and we need to have a defining feature of what, 0.5 FTE means in terms of hours worked, and we need to say that this is how many hours you're expected to work. There's no, going greater than that number. There's no wiggle room. There is a clear line in the sand of saying, this is how much you're paid for, and, we're stating that the University of Florida cannot continue to get free labor off of GA. So once again, we remove this language of an average. We are not, interested in using average as a defining feature. If an international GA goes over their allotted 0.5 FTE a single time, that is, a violation of their visa, and we're not interested in putting GAs in that position. We understand that the average might work better for some other things long term, but we are not interested in kind of having that conversation of saying GAs should be allowed to overwork the first half of the semester as long as they average it out and underwork the rest of the semester. Because that's just not, that's not conducive to a positive work environment in any scenario. When we go down to distinction from work, we've kept a lot of our previous definition here. As you can see, we've gone to the 2 hours per credit that they are registered for. I think previously we had 1. 2 is, 1 was based off of that document from the museum. We've gone up to 2. We think that's more than fair. But we're willing to have a further conversation about that if necessary.
Can we talk about your math in line 21 again, Austin?
Line 21, yeah.
Yeah, I want to make
2
sure
hours,
I
yeah.
understand what you're saying. So what you're saying here is for research assistants, it's excess if, when do you start calculating the excess? Because I think maybe, so if I register for 19 credits,
Okay,
or if I register for 9 credits.
yeah,
Okay. Right, I misspoke.
Yeah.
If I register for 9 credits, my limit of work would be 18.
your limit would be however much you're paid, which is, if you're on a 0.5 FTE, you're
Right.
paid 20 hours. And then because you're signed up for 9 credits of hours, they're expected that you probably put 2 hours of work into per credit. And if those duties significantly overlap, which is the scenario here, if there's significant overlap between what you're paid for and what you're doing research for as a credit,
Right,
you could work a total of 38 hours. But this is under the work that 18 of those hours are for your credits that you're signed up for. You're getting paid for 20, and then since you're
Right.
signed up for research, that's additional work.
so is there any calculation for, in your, hypothetically speaking, if I were not a GA and I was just a PhD student
Mhm.
and I registered for 9 credits?
Yeah.
Is the assumption that I would be able to do all of the studies and necessary in 18 hours a week?
That was kind of our assumption, yeah.
Okay,
as you- you
I just want to make sure I understand.
27 then. If you're going with like our accreditor.
Well, but that's not what this
Right,
said.
right, it should be 3, because it would be 2 hours in class or 1 hour in class and then 2 hours out is the thing. So if there's research credits, you're not actually in class, it would be 3 hours per credit, it'd be 27 hours.
Okay,
According to our accreditor.
I just want to make sure I understand how you got your calculation. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Go
and
on.
we presented 3 before and, that was also removed. So, I mean, we've had a conversation. We're willing to obviously have a conversation about what works best, but we're not interested in ignoring the situation any longer. We want to have this conversation and solve this. So moving forward, we have for the clarification of FTE, obviously, upon request, you get a description of your expectations for FTE and ensure it applies. And then, can no longer scroll, we have departments, reviewing their workload, at least once per academic year. To revise the workload, we need to make sure that we add those protections in, so that departments, when they're telling their GAs, you are assigned to this course, this is how many students normally attend it, this is how long it's taken in the past to get that done, that they know what work they're putting on their GAs. They know this course requires more work, this course requires less work, and they know what they should expect of their GAs. We should not be giving GAs courses that have, 100 people in them and saying you can get that done in 10 hours a week. That's not something that's reasonable. So we need to make sure the departments are reviewing those things and building that in. And of course, we always add the extinction that departments can have these clear distinctions when there is their overlap. They can go beyond what is required in the contract and say, this is where we're drawing the specific line and saying to make sure that we are making sure people are getting paid for the hours that they are working. And yeah, I believe that is it. Do you guys have anything to add for that?
No, I mean, I reiterate your point that, if you scroll up, I think 7.2, where we were talking about the maths.
Yeah.
A and B, yeah. That those hours that were specifying the 2 or the 3, like, we're very willing to like bargain that. We just want to have a conversation about that so that we can actually define what counts as excess workload. We want to have a definition. We're not inherently attached to it too.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Eva, I think where we are is if you would scroll up. It's there. It's in 7.1. And I can tell you, and I think we've tried to say this, and I think at one point, Dr. Kelleher attempted to do this in a different way from more the grad school academic perspective is, I don't think we are interested in contemplating a factor of your work that is predicated upon your credit hour registration.
But the
Period,
thing
full
is that
stop.
That is what happens in reality, because graduate assistants who are RAs and who are also completing research for their programs
Mhm.
sometimes are overworked by their PIs under the excuse that, this also counts for X, Y, and Z, their dissertation or publication, but it is still overwork, and we want to define it.
Yeah, and it comes back to, I think, the idea we've had before, we're paid hourly. And yet we are given tasks to complete with given timeframes that treat us like salaried workers. And so the current situation, CCL, which is 7.1, which we've had this discussion about, that does not work. That does not solve work, and that's why we're having this discussion, because CCL does not work. Instead, what we're having is people are working there 20 hours a week, and then if they're signed up for any amount of research credits, it's essentially treated like an infinity. You just keep working until the tasks are done. And that's not conductive to any healthy person in any scenario. That is overwork. That is telling them, yeah, we'll pay you for 20 hours a week, but we're going to keep giving you tasks until we're satisfied that you're doing enough. And that's not what, I can't think of a good word there, but that is just, it's unacceptable. To allow that situation to continue,
Yeah, I think where and we're gonna remain at a difference on this, Austin, and that is the fact that it seems as if GAU is drawing an equal sign and saying that they're the same hours. In other words, the hours you're getting paid for are the same hours if you're in a situation where there's overlap. Those 20 hours are the same 20 hours. It seems as if there's that argument to some extent, to some degree, they're the same.
I don't understand. Can you rephrase your point?
Well, because you're putting it in terms of how much you're registered for.
Because we do have to register for courses, and
No,
sometimes those courses are research credits.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. What I'm saying is the work. It appears as if the argument is there's no distinction. And therefore, if I complete 20 hours, I should be completely done because the 20 hours required by my registration and the 20 hours you're paying me for are the same time.
That's
No,
not what we're saying
no.
now. This is saying
Okay.
excess workload is after working your contract hours
Right,
plus the hours per research credit. So this is saying you're paid 20 hours a week, you are working 20 hours a week.
right.
If you're signed up for research credit, that's additional stuff you have taken on in addition to your 20 hours. But that has an endpoint. That is not an infinite sign, that your advisor can keep adding work to you and say, well, this is for your research credits. We're not having people work 60 hours a week and getting paid for 20 on the assumption like, well, you're signed up for research credit. That's what the rest of the work is for. Because that's not acceptable.
I get what you're saying.
Mhm.
And I guess what I'm saying is it appears as if we continue to go over this, is that it appears as if GAU wants to put people's research projects into the contract. It's almost as if you want Providence over people's actual academic relationship with the university.
I don't think we're saying that at all. I think what we're saying here is in cases where there is significant overlap pre-existing for what you're paid for and what you're being told to do for your research credits, they cannot treat your research credits as you can work an infinite number of hours per week.
But-
That's what we're saying.
Right, but in those cases, wouldn't it be easier to draw the distinction between what was actually serviceable for your project and what was serviceable for your work relationship?
No, because right now there is no distinction. Right now, you work until you complete the task that your advisor has set for you, no matter how many hours that takes, and you get paid 20 hours a week, regardless of how many hours you've worked that week.
You answered my question now, because you just said there is no distinction, and that was the first question I asked, which is, it appears as if you're saying that there's no distinction, and that's what you just said.
That's not, okay,
Maybe I'm not, my question was, it appears as if you're arguing there's no distinction, and that, you just responded by saying there is no distinction.
this is specifically in cases where there is significant overlap, where it is very hard to tell the difference between research and what you're getting paid for.
Right,
In those specific circumstances, you should not be forced to work 60 hours a week and get paid for 20.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah,
What I'm saying is that what this would do, if we were to even consider this, which we're not going to, is you would be telling people how much time their academic work would take. It would become part of the contract. We're not gonna do that. We're not gonna put the academic relationship between graduate students and the university into the employment contract. We're just not going to do it.
How do you differentiate from them in a grievance? How would you differ in those cases where they are basically, my dissertation is the work that I am being tasked with for that like goes with my advisor's work. And I don't know, maybe like nine credits of research,
Well,
and I'm an RA.
I think in Austin's case, that would be, if you're saying my PI is telling me I have to work 60 hours a week.
But
Bring it
your
forward.
PI is not gonna say you have to work 60 hours a week.
Oh, well, the example he just said is my PI is telling me I have to work 60 hours a
no,
week.
your PI is giving you enough tasks that's taking you 60 hours a week. If your PI continues to give you task after task that is taking you 60 hours a week, and you're paid for 20,
Mhm.
is that overwork? Because in the current situation, it's not. The current situation is if you're signed up for anything, if you signed up for a research credit, you can do 40 hours on that research credit, as long as you're completing your task and going towards your degree, even though you're getting paid for 20 hours of doing very similar tasks.
I think, and to your point, it would be incumbent on you to show how it was or was not related to your actual research work.
So the graduate assistant can never be overworked as long as their dissertation matches with their PI's.
No, that's not what I said at all.
I'm asking you for like a clear distinction of how we would come to a definition of excess workload, that a graduate student can easily read on their CBA and say, yes, this is happening to me, or no, this is not happening to me.
I think that's a really good question. And what I'm saying is that I think trying to distill it down into something that simple is gonna be impossible.
I don't think so.
Because we don't all, again, everyone's not just taking coursework, everyone is engaging in research. And if you're engaging in research as part of your academic pursuit, there's no way we could possibly cover every single case and every relationship that everyone has with every lab and every PI. There's no way. Their standard, the standard has been in there. My understanding, I went back, this standard has been in the contract for many, many, many years.
GAs have been taken advantage of for many, many, many years because they see this number and they say, I'm paid to work 20 hours a week. Real life, going your day to day, no one measures that they're working 20 hours a week. They just say, well, I work until I get the task done and my PI is proud of me. I work until I make significant progress, even if that means I have to work until midnight to make that progress every day. But at the end of the day, I get the same check for, a paltry amount of a couple $100s. So it doesn't work. The current situation does not work. Ignoring this does not solve the issue. We're going back to this thing of ignoring it, saying, we can't go through these things. It does not work. Yes, we have a grievance process. People can bring these really excessive cases and say, yes, I am being overworked. But at the end of the day, it's not always about those excessive cases. It's about the people who are being worked 10 to 15 hours every week, which is not an extreme case in this scenario. That's the normal. And those people, how are they going to be able to prove that? It's impossible to prove that in these situations. And it's going to continue to be impossible because we could always say, oh, well, you were paid 20 hours and you have evidence, you timed yourself that you worked 45 hours last week, but you were signed up for 9 credits. So that's not too far out of the ballpark of what's expected of you. That's reasonable. Even though you have to work all of these hours to make progress.
We're not going to sit here and let you put words in our mouth and say that working 65 hours a week is reasonable. That's not what we said. We never said that. And to continue to put those type of hours on it is just ridiculous.
That's the reality.
Well, if it were so pervasive and so widespread, you might be able to show, maybe not many, but you'd be able to show one.
I can
One.
show you.
Bring one. We
But
have
the thing-
sat
the
in here so
problem-
many times and say,
the
if this is such a
problem
widespread.
Is
Go ahead.
that those things are very tricky because you have to bring it to your advisor or to your department and say, hey, this person keeps overworking me. And now all of a sudden, your relationship with your PI, who is supposed to, help you with your dissertation, write you letters of recommendation, help you with networking opportunities. Now that relationship is all screwed up. People don't want to put pressure on those relationships, right? We have had cases where GAU has to go, because people are requesting their Weingarten rights because their PIs want to have meetings with, the GA about how they're not working hard enough, even though the GA is working over 40 hours a week.
Then-
We have had those cases.
And you were
the-
in the room, then why didn't you file the grievance if you felt it was
Because-
inappropriate?
If the GA does not want to file the grievance, this GA and GAU is not going to file the grievance. If the GA does not want to put their academic career at risk because of a grievance, if they just want to endure it for 4 years because they're making a cost benefit analysis, we can't force them to file a grievance.
You guys have any more questions?
Okay, I think we have anyone who wanted to talk on workload.
Is, Anisha, right? I'm assuming it was,
I think she got most of her points through for the RA and TA verification there.
do you have someone who wanted to talk on stipend that was late because of the meeting?
I'm not sure. Is there anyone in the Zoom who wanted to talk on workload or,
Anisha says I can say more.
if you wanted to speak for, about a minute or so, we're happy to give you that minute.
Thanks a lot. I would like to press on this issue a lot more. Austin rightfully mentioned, and the other person who is mentioning that many a times because there is excessive workload, just because we have to do that cost benefit analysis with our advisor and with the other scientists that we may be working for our RA-ship, and just for TA assignments, it's in no way any TA, any GA is just working just for 20 hours on a 0.5 FTE. Everyone, you can take a wide survey. They will tell you that everyone is working more than 30 to 40 hours on half the pay that UF is providing us. It is very, very difficult to manage and juggle, and because people are also doing their own personal research for their thesis, sometimes many people, especially those who are working in wet labs that have running experiments, they're working almost somewhere between 80 to 100 hours a week, because they have to go back in the labs at the night, check out their experiments, rerun them if they've been interrupted by any cause, take readings and whatnot. In no way it gets covered under 20 hours, not at all. You can, I would highly recommend to back up the argument, and even on the UF side, you should ask students, ask all the GAs to rightfully mention their workloads. You will see the reality. You'll see the different change in numbers as well. From what you anticipate, what is real, and what is given in our contracts. It's very different, sir.
So, but we're back to the same thing. So again, is the argument being made that it's 20 hours for everything?
No, we're not I mean,
Because I would agree, everyone should be working more than 20 hours between their work and then also their academic work. Yes, it should be more than 20 hours a week. Because
Right,
it's two separate
and we
things.
are agreeing that that can be the case if defined with you work your 20 hours, if you're on a 0.5 FTE, and if you are taking research credits or the education, I don't remember what they're called, the TA credits, then you can spend more time on those tasks because there are credits that are saying you're supposed to spend this time
Right.
on these tasks.
Right.
After that, then it becomes excess workload.
I understand the way you guys have put it together. And I guess what I'm saying is you're including a relationship which is not contemplated by your employment relationship with the university. Your academic work relationship is not subject to the contract. It's not. I understand that in the way that you're attempting to calculate it, it has to be considered. But I mean, we will go back and talk about it again. But I do not think it is likely that we are going to be interested in putting your academic registration or placing your academic relationship with the university under the CBA.
That sounds convenient to me because for me to be employed at the University of Florida as a GA, I have to be a student. So
Yes, yes, you do.
viewed in the GA-ness, there is a student-ness too. So I mean, it sounds very convenient to like say, you know, you can't put any academic in this article, but in this definition of graduate assistantship, there is a student component. Other than that, I'll say that Eduardo wants to add to what Anusha said.
Yeah.
Eddie?
Either.
Your main text. Oh, it's not.
Oh,
letting him-
can everybody?
There you
hear
go.
me?
You're good.
Yeah,
Awesome. So just to add in, just to the whole inquiry and stuff, apologies if I came in a little bit late. I was actually doing some experiments and stuff. But I'm a PhD student in the College of Medicine, and my PhD work is in human molecular genetics, right? And we're more concerned with neurodegenerative diseases like ALS, Alzheimer's, excuse me, and all those repeat expansion diseases, right? So the whole interest of the lab is sort of defining these diseases and understanding ways how can we target this disease and cure, right? However, because of the complexity of this diseases and stuff, it's a lot of work to be done, right? And a lot of things to be understood. And because of all that, there's, like I said, there's a lot of work. And as a PhD student in a wet lab, I'm literally gaining about 60 to 70 hours a week, right? And I don't take classes anymore because I'm already a candidate, right? I've been already, this is my 4th year as a PhD candidate and stuff. And honestly, there's no time in day in order to even like remotely hold a second job in order to cover my living expenses and what's not, right? But one of the points here that I want to make is that um, we work a lot, and it's not by choice. Sometimes it's by choice, but it's because of the nature of the things that we do, right? I'm working directly with stem cells, human cell lines, and even transgenic mice, right? And all those living systems need to be taken care of the whole time. It's not because, oh, my PI mentor says so. No, it's because it's on me to keep them alive or keep them in a specific way. And that takes a lot of time, whether I like it or not. So I'm here clocking in like 60 to 70 hours a week just to maintain them, do experiments, plan X, Y, and Z, right? So it's because of the workload and because of the specific stipend that we receive as our graduate students, I'm actually contemplating and quitting my um, my degree. And it's not because I want to, but it's because of the expenses, right? The workload, I do understand that because of the nature of the things, but more or so because of the living expenses with inflation, as well as rent. I just can't really keep on paying rent. And I'm actually depending on student loans because of that. So I'm racking up all this debt while I'm here in school, just attempting to gain this degree, right? So just wanted to give my 2 cents in, and by no means I'm asking for sympathy or I'm just turning this into a sob story, but more so I'm asking for consideration of like what, excuse me, what graduate students go through. So thank you.
Hey, Eddie.
Yes.
Sorry, this is Hannah from the GAU side. I'm wondering, could you, in like 30 seconds to a minute, give us just an explanation of how entwined your personal research is, like your dissertation research, in with the research that your PI does? Can you just speak to that interconnectedness for people who don't have experience in a wet lab?
So would you mind just like my relationship with the PI and then the research and stuff? Is that what
No.
you're asking?
The question that we're trying to ask, right, or the thing that we've really been emphasizing is that in a wet lab situation like this, right, or in a situation with a PI,
Right.
your research that you do for your publications and your dissertation are completely intertwined with your PI's research, right? It's the same stuff that goes in their grants. It's the same stuff that brings in this, like, it's also their publications. Can you just speak a little bit to that in your specific situation? You've already touched on the topic, but like, I don't want to like give you the answer. So do you understand what I'm asking? Okay.
I think I do, and I'll attempt to answer that briefly, right? So everything that it's written on the grants, right? It's sent out to either the NIH, whatever agency, that stuff. It really goes in hand with what I do, right? Because that's part of my work, right? And in order to fund that, we need to get money, right? So everything that is written by my PI, mentor, whatever way you guys want to call this individual, is the same as like what's written, and I guess yes, like everything that's written on the grant is I have to do, in order to be able to produce the data that is proposed. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah.
So if you were, let's say you're on a fellowship or you won the lottery and you didn't have to work and you didn't have to be employed 0.50 FTE, but you were still wanted to finish your PhD under the mentorship of that advisor, how much time would it take you a week to go ahead and finish the PhD outside of the work file?
Same amount of probably, let's say I was a millionaire, then out of just leisure, so I want to finish this because I'm passionate about it, which I am, right? And X, Y, and Z, right? Still gonna take the same amount of time because like biology, it's very complex, right? And some things are not under my control, which I think I'm controlling. And this is where I'm gonna allude back to what I mentioned earlier, that I work with cell lines, right? I work with transgenic mice as well as human stem cells, right? All those things, no matter how much I try to control them, sometimes they just act funky, right? That's the just nature of the things, right? No matter how much planning you want to do, right? And because of the complexity of this, it takes a long time, right? So again, if I was a millionaire just doing this out of leisure, I'll still be putting the same amount of time in order
Thank
to
you.
like,
Thanks, Eddie.
Thank you, Eddie.
yeah, thank you.
All right, we're gonna move on to our next article here.
Okay.
Which should be Article 8. Give me just a minute to get everything pulled up. Right,
Thanks.
thanks.
This 2 pages?
Yeah, again, 2 pages. They're stapler, unfortunately.
I'm sorry.
There you go. I was just looking at it real quick.
Red on the screen is blue on the paper, looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slightly different, but we're really focused just on this one section down here either way.
Okay.
So what we appreciate the discussion we had with UF last time and in regards to how to get bereavement leave and how to get it properly situated. And what we've done is we've said GA should be entitled to 4 days of paid leave, and after that, internationals should get provided 3 additional days of paid leave. We think it's unfair to tell international GAs that just because their family members are international, that they have to take unpaid leave, that they have to lose out on some of that income. Everything that giving them the additional paid leave is makes the most sense. And so that would give them a total of 7 days of paid leave total if they needed those additional 3 days. But I believe that's the only change we have from the prior proposal with that language there.
Questions?
Do you guys have anything you wanted to add to this?
Maybe we should give a little bit of background for people who are here for the first time.
Yeah. So what we're talking about for everyone in the chat is we're focusing on bereavement leave here. So this is leave after the loss of an immediate family member specifically. And what kind of leave you would get for that example. So we haven't had bereavement before. This is a new kind of discussion we're having. And we've made some good progress in terms of both sides trying to figure out what works best. And so the last proposal from UF was, I believe, 2 days of paid leave for an immediate family member. I can't remember exactly, but it was leave for an immediate family member that was paid. And if you were international, you would receive additional days that were unpaid. And so we've changed it to being 4 days of paid leave regardless, and then international GAs can receive an additional 3 days of paid leave if they needed to. And this is separate from our existing provisions where you can have personal time and paid leave through the other circumstances. Obviously, those have their own caveats, but
You mind if I just do it?
yeah, if you want to
Clarification?
clarify
Yeah,
your
so
action for that.
Our last proposal was 4 days of paid bereavement leave for everybody. It wasn't 2 and something else. It was, if you look in line 71 of our proposal 8.4, we proposed 4 days of paid leave upon the death of an immediate family member across the board, everybody. That was our proposal. And then we proposed up to 6 additional days of unpaid leave in the event of an international untimely death.
Yeah,
Or not
so-
untimely death, just in the event of an international death.
Yeah, so our discussion, our change is just from going to those 6 days of unpaid to 3 days of paid. So a lower number of days, but they would be paid for those international GAs. But if there are no questions, we'll move on.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I'll just make a point. I mean, I think one of the reasons, Austin, to you and your team, that one of the reasons that we saw fit to increase it across the board and leave it there was because we talked about a number of hypothetical scenarios where the death being international actually wasn't as controlling of a factor as many other factors that people might run into, which is why we said, look, let's just increase the number across the board and then give people access and protection in an unpaid way, but not actually give a paid benefit to one more person than another person. And one of the examples that we talked about when we were having our discussion, just to sort of let you know how we were thinking about it, is what if someone unfortunately had a death in rural North Dakota? In some cases, it may actually be, and I'm just using that as a hypothetical, I didn't actually do the logistics of how to get there. I mean, it might actually be more difficult to get there than it would be, or if they're live in Alaska, as opposed to getting if they live right in Paris. Like, I'm just trying, you know what I'm saying? So I think the international, that was one of the reasons why we said, look, let's take that part of it out of the provision and let's look at getting everyone 4 paid days and then a safety net that can go beyond that, but it wouldn't be paid. So I just wanted you to see that's why we had arrived at the concession we've been in. To your point, I did say in a bargaining session, last best final, and then we made a concession afterward. I will acknowledge that happened. But frankly, we were compelled by some of the things that you had proposed, and we spent more time thinking about it, and so we did move our position. So I want to acknowledge what you said was accurate, but I also wanted you to understand a little bit about why we changed pretty dramatically from where we were to where we arrived. So
Appreciate the explanation.
Sure.
I will point out that, I mean, the case of Paris, is very, specific. I would say most of international students, I would assume, do not come from, European countries.
okay.
And so I mean, I feel like on average, for international students, it would take longer and it would be more costly to, travel to their home destinations, in the case of like bereavement leave. So that is our point, on trying to extend the paid time for international GAs, for bereavement leave.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you about the cost of travel. I mean, I think it's a question of whether or not we want to provide disproportionate paid benefits. That's what we're really struggling with, was we felt in some respects, it got awful close to what could be construed as a discriminatory behavior. That's why we got very nervous about providing a paid benefit, which in a way that could be construed predicated on someone's, not necessarily because it would be where the death occurred, which is why we wrote it that way, as opposed to being, from country of origin or from, wherever they originally came. And like I said, that was why we felt compelled to increase just the benefit to everybody, but provide a safety net that was unpaid. So I appreciate your point. I'm not disagreeing about the cost of travel, I'm not disputing that. But that is how we arrived at where we were.
Okay.
All right, so we will move on here to Article 13.
Okay.
Which should be our last one here today. This one is a couple of pages, but I've turned them, each copy is flipped 90 degrees, so hopefully you can stuff right here. Thanks. Give me just a second as well, my Okay, so Article 13 is one of those things that it's a longer article, there's a lot going into it. And so we're not at a point, obviously, where we're discussing some of the finer words. We're at a point where we're kind of discussing these kind of big ideas in a lot of different ways. And so I'm gonna go through, obviously, it's a longer article, but I'll kind of go through some of the main things here. So obviously, we've reworked the beginning here. And I believe this is the rewording that the UF team actually put in at the very beginning for A and B. I think that's
Our last proposal rejected A and B and.
rejected. Okay, that is from us then. And then we've kept our extended list of protected classes that we had done last time. And much of the definitions as they defined them. Obviously, if we're going to keep the word cast in C, then we're going to keep the definition of it. We've gotten rid of this request for the equal opportunity documentation. I think UF made some interesting points about how that would actually work. And so we have conceded on that and said, well, you know, while the information I think would be helpful, maybe it's too much of an ask here, and we can you know rest on that a little bit. And we got into sexual harassment. A lot of the language, obviously, we had some agreement on some of it, and we had some disagreement on how this works. We had separated sexual harassment from sexual misconduct, and UF had combined them into one article, and so we've agreed to that combination of those two sections. But we have done as well as we have kept the list that we had before of some unwelcome actions as they define for sexual harassment. So we kept your accommodation, but then we've also kept these additional definitions as we added them there. For these definitions and these examples here. Moving on, we've kept our definition of bullying. We think that not having a bullying article, or bullying section within this article is a loss. So we do believe that it's necessary to have that definition, to have examples, and to show that you know, bullying, well, it sounds like something from middle school is a real issue, and it's something that we can solve. Obviously, the language here is our best first case here, but we're welcome to having changes in that language if that's what UF would agree to. If you have language that would fit this better, we're happy to have that conversation. When it comes to the prohibited consensual relationships, I think we had agreed on this last time. I don't think we made any changes to this.
I'm looking at it relatively quickly. It looks like it's all the same as.
Yeah, I believe the intent is to keep it the same. I think we
Okay.
agreed on this section
The
here.
colors are different, but I think
Yeah.
the words are the same.
Yeah, I believe it is. If there's any differences, let me know.
Okay.
We'll make sure, but we've removed this transitional funding pilot program. Obviously, it's something that has been in contracts for other graduate unions across the country. But you have indicated that they were not interested in that sort of provision, and we said, okay. Obviously, we had a lot in our last article, and we're willing to say, let's take that out and let's focus on some of these things that are more vital to us, such as this these restroom facilities discussion. So this is again very similar language to what we had before, which is having prompt access to restroom facilities that do not require GAs to use bathrooms inconsistent with their gender identity, such as access to gender neutral bathrooms, and a brief idea of what prompt access means and how that would exist by trying to balance this idea of showing GAs respect and saying we can take a very minimal effort to make sure that you are comfortable in your work environment. We've removed this committee that we had added as an idea. Ooh, did not mean to slide through a whole page. This committee that we had added before. This was just based off of the the data we had seen before, from the police reports about the Violence Against Women Act and those rising on campus, we think that obviously, violence in any form is, not something obviously we agree with, so, we had this committee, UF indicated they were not interested in having this sort of committee, for their own reasons, so, we have removed that, so we can focus on these other things again. We have kept our language on, retaliation and medical confidentiality, and gender identity. I don't think we've made any changes to, what that language was. We've kept our language on, pregnancy and lactation and access to documents. Obviously, there's a lot of different things that go into these sort of things, but, we think they are all important for their all, various means. And then we've, gotten rid of this last section on severability. You had indicated that that would, again, be a very complex thing to try to implement, and so we've removed that to try to make this as streamlined as possible.
Would you mind scrolling back up just a little bit
Yep,
to 13.7?
13.7 here.
Where's access to documents?
Access to
It
documents,
was lower.
that
We were
was,
just looking at it.
yeah,
Oh,
that's
it's 13.10,
13.10,
okay.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
So again, we're still not focused on the specific words, we're focused on sort of these big sections still. But we're happy to have a discussion on any of them, and, we are not locked into any of the specific wording. These are our attempts at our best wording, but if UF has any wording they think is better for any of these things, we're happy to have that conversation and make sure it works for both of us.
So let me ask this question on sort of a high level, Austin.
Yep.
Did you all have a chance to look at this against the Title IX policy that we discussed last time? Did you happen to do like a side-by-side look?
I had looked at both of them. I don't think it was like a direct side by side. It was a separate thing.
Because I think, and look, you're welcome to do this or not, but it's a suggestion, because I want to acknowledge that we are really far apart on this article.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that might be helpful, just a suggestion, not obligated to do it in any way, shape, or form, is if you would look at there's a lot of information on our policy hub and on our website about Title IX and sexual violence and some of these other topics.
Mhm.
And if you felt you could possibly take a look at that and see where you saw major gaps that you wanted addressed, that might help us talk in more specific terms about things that you all identify in a specific way. And the reason is, and I'm gonna try to say this in a way that, a little more differently than the way we shared it last time. These protections, many of these protections already exist because we're obligated to have them, not just for GAU, but for all of our students and all of our employees. Having a multi-tiered filter through which to put these issues is more complicated, and from our perspective, unnecessary, based on the fact that we don't want anybody experiencing some of the things that are contemplated in here. And that's why I guess I'm saying, if we could maybe, if we saw a way to look at those specific areas where you're like, look, we looked at the way that you guys handled this specific part of this specific topic, and we don't think it's sufficient. As opposed to, because I think a lot of this you're gonna find is very, very similar to what we already have. And I'm not sure, well, actually, from my perspective, having it be duplicated in both either our regulation, because in some respects it's actually in a regulation, or in our policy for all employees and or our policy for students, and also in the CBA, I'm not sure what positive purpose that ultimately is going to serve. Now, if the position is just instead, look, we want to bargain this in our contract, period. We don't care what you have in the regulation and the policy. That's a position. If that's what it is, I appreciate that. I can understand that. Again, if it's of interest for you all to look at, I think it may be a way for us to maybe focus on some of the more narrowly construed issues. Maybe not. I don't know. And the only reason I say that is because we are really, really far apart on this article, and I think we're going to remain far apart on it. It's not that we disagree. in principle, globally speaking, I don't want you to get the impression that we don't think protecting our students and our employees isn't of tantamount importance. It obviously is. The question is, for us, we just don't believe that the place for these protections to exist is in the negotiated contract, because we have an obligation to do these things regardless of whether or not we bargain them.
So you would be in favor of just removing the entire article, since I'm assuming that UF has other, policies and regulations that are, in place to, avoid discrimination.
Well, we have many, and
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm saying is if we thought there was if you guys had a specific interest in saying, look, this one thing, and I think you have done that with the restrooms, to your point, you
Yeah.
have identified that. Okay, but, I just think that would help us maybe move beyond what you would point out, which I thought which is a good point to begin. Look, we're still talking about major concepts. We're not talking about individual words at this point. We're not even talking about individual provisions. I mean, we're talking about almost the entirety of the article.
Yeah, I guess my question is, why would UF agree with GAU years and years ago to create a unlawful discrimination article if UF already had clauses separate from the existence of GAU against discrimination?
I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
No, I mean, from my position, there is a utility for graduate assistants to have these things in articles in a contract, binding contract between GAU and UF, irrespective of whether UF has additional policies or
Right.
policies about these things. That's my position.
I understand.
I don't understand the UF's perspective that it is counterproductive. Because if anything, it's redundant until the point that UF decides to, do something with those policies and regulations that we don't agree with. In that case, it's so beneficial for us to have it in our contract, because then we bargain.
I appreciate that.
So
appreciate
I don't understand if UF is, doesn't want to discriminate and is in theory so accepting of these things, that the only problem is with the redundancy. I don't see why there is a problem with redundancy.
I'll give you a sort of a simple example. If someone was subject to something in here, right? It would be, in my mind, where it would be counterproductive is if someone, God forbid, was subject to something you have listed in lines 110 through 126. Which is you have that list of things,
Yeah.
right? With all due and deserved respect to GAU, honestly, with all due respect to your all's union. If someone, God forbid, was subject to that, I would hope that they would be in touch with the Title IX office and not file a grievance. Because a grievance is a poor mechanism to deal with this type of behavior that somebody has experienced. That's kind of my point. That it is not, in our opinion, it is not the right tool to deal with that.
Why not?
Because it deserves something much more intensely reactionary than a grievance if, God forbid, somebody experiences this type of behavior.
Is the grievance in the Title IX filing like, what's the word? What's the word? They cannot happen at the same time.
No, they absolutely could. They
Okay.
absolutely could. I guess what I'm saying is if there's a Title IX complaint, that has a completely different process and mechanism that's subject to all types of confidentiality. It's treated very seriously. Not that grievances aren't treated seriously, but normally grievances are treated as more of an administrative matter. While this could be an administrative matter, I would not want the person who is, God forbid, subjected to one of these behaviors. The first thing they do is to file a grievance and submit it to a grievance officer. I would want them to go to the Title IX office to get access to the services and supports that we have in place for someone who's subjected to this type of thing.
If they're not, still, I can't.
Mutually exclusive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mutually exclusive, I don't see, because GAU would, if they do come in contact with GAU, because GAU is a support network for graduate assistants and they're seeking support.
Mhm.
GAU can also say you also have Title IX, rights. you can file through Title IX as well.
Right.
I mean, I don't.
They're not mutually exclusive. They're certainly not mutually exclusive. I guess what I'm saying is that I just don't think the mechanism for grievances is robust enough to handle these type of, it's not robust enough to handle these type of topics.
And I
So
think,
you would rather remove the right for them to go through grievance process instead of them having the right to go through grievance process if that's what they want? And also have the right to go through Title IX, filing?
I don't think I'll be honest, I think that again, my point is that the Title IX office in these cases is far more equipped to providing the assistance and support, the supportive measures that need to be put in place immediately. And I don't know what the grievance process is gonna resolve if the Title IX office is already aware of and handling one of these type of issues. I don't know what more the grievance process could avail that person that the Title IX office would not have access to.
I think let's get away from this example a little bit. I think, on a point you mentioned earlier, there are times where imagine, one of these things were to happen to a GA, God forbid, we don't want that to happen, obviously. And it wasn't something that was covered by the Title IX office.
Okay.
Okay, this contract would be
Fair
their
point.
protection
Yes.
for those examples. In addition, what if we build these into the contract and then some of these things are removed from the Title IX office? They're saying that the Title IX office can be a lot more relaxed on some of these things. I'm not saying that's going to happen.
Right.
But
It's a
the
hypothetical.
policies that are set, what if the federal government were to say, hey, you don't have to, Title IX, you don't have to worry about these sort of protections. We build them into the contract and we ensure that our GAs for years to come have these protections,
Okay.
regardless if they're overlapped. And in that case, I think we are very happy to have that overlap. If there is language that we need to modify to make sure that we are not having discordant overlap, we're fine with that. We want to make sure it is matching, but it is matching and then the next step. That is what we are trying here. That's why, for this language up for the list of protected classes, we obviously, we didn't remove any of those things. We didn't change those things. We kept the language and we added to it. And that's what we're trying to do with a lot of these other sections.
I got it. I understand. I appreciate both of you sort of sharing that. It helps us sort of understand, from where you're coming.
Mhm.
So it sounds like it's more about kind of what I had said was maybe the other option is it's the ability to have it in there so that you all have the ability to bargain at specifics if something changes in the future, so on and so forth. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I hope, obviously this is still a long article, but I hope it is appreciated that we did remove several sections that we had indicated before. We have tried to make those strides to meet and take that first step towards a center point here.
No,
So we
I
hope that is appreciated. Can't speak, but cannot
You
speak
got
it up. Yeah. But yeah,
Got
that's the last article we have. If there is
Okay.
anyone in the chat who would like to speak for maybe a minute, we can give you guys a couple of minutes to talk here. We obviously have already had a decent number of people, so we don't want to have people sit here for 30 minutes straight. But if there is anyone who wants to say something for a minute, now is the time. And either raise your hands, put it in the chat, or just unmute yourself.
What issue would you like to speak on?
I would like to speak on stipends.
Yeah, if you would love to have a minute to speak. Or
Do I need
maybe
to come closer so people in the meeting can hear me?
you can if you want to. If you don't, can you project the mic is technically here,
Okay,
so
I'll-
whatever works.
First on your shoulder.
Yeah, of course.
You can say it.
I don't want to.
Okay.
I was just in class for 3 hours. Hi, my name's Ellie. I'm a first-year PhD student and I'm a member of the union. And I'm on a 9-month GA assistantship, that's the word. And I live here in Gainesville. I moved here and I just wanted to say that my stipend, I use more than half of it to pay my rent each month, and that is just my rent. My rent is $1,000 and $1,050, and that is just rent. So when I add groceries, utilities, my car insurance, my renter's insurance, that's several hundred more dollars. And that does not make my stipend go very far at all, because my gross amount, not my net, is $2,000, $2,010. So that gets eaten into very quickly. And that is why I joined the union. So thank you for hearing me speak.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in person or in the chat that would like to speak for a minute or two? If not, that is okay. Not seeing anyone unmute themselves for now, so I think we'll call it there.
Okay.
Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you.
Do we have future sessions set up? I think my calendar ended on the 18th because next Monday we're,
And then Mondays.
next Monday's holiday, so
Calendar invite
I
for
think
two
we're-
in
Is it?
December.
Yeah, I've got,
do we have the two in December?
we had the 2nd and the 9th on
Okay.
the schedule.
My calendar might just be incorrect on my end. If we have those on the schedule, then we're happy to keep those. That's
But
fine.
let me check and make sure. I don't know. I can't remember if y'all reserved rooms or not. Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
You have 2335 for the 2nd and 2340 for the 9th.
okay. I could not recall on my calendar. I had it ending for whatever reason. I'm glad we have those set up. We will see you guys in 2 weeks.
All right, see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I was facing you. I don't know everybody.